by the Albion Central School District. I'm Michael Bonafide, and I'm going to be the moderator for the evening. Please rise and join me for the Pledge of Allegiance to our flag. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. I thought about having some opening remarks as moderator, talking about the political climate. I thought, you could talk about our aging population, declining tax base, upstate versus downstate, what's fair and equitable. There's a lot of political issues we could touch on and just start the conversation. But I really thought I'd rather hear the candidates, have time for your questions to come up. And we compress this into 2 hours. We've got a lot of information that we would like to convey to you about the protocol and the guidelines first. But I did have a couple of things I'd like to touch on. And they'll be brief. And one is, isn't it our good fortune to be able to come and do this? I mean, you can take it for granted and it seems simple, but I think it bears repeating and talking about. We're in a public place. We're in a public facility supported by public funds. We're able to gather as a group. We can express our opinions. We can ask questions and get replies from people that are going to represent us, people that we have chosen to be our leadership into the future. We truly are fortunate. The second part of that is how fortunate we are today in this local election, in this small community, to have the quality of candidates and the number of candidates that we have. You think about it. We have 7 folks sitting up here. They're our friends. They're our neighbors. They're good citizens. They're good people. These aren't career politicians. They're like us. And they're not doing this for the money. So you think about it, we're pretty darn fortunate. We all have different ideas. We have different ideals. We're not going to agree with everything every one of them says. They're not going to agree with each other. But, man, we're able to decide our future and where our community is going based on forums like this. And the fact that we're able to do this, and we have this quality of people, we're fortunate. So I wanted to just make those observations and mention them to you because, you can read things. You look on the web and on Facebooks and on websites, and people go after each other, and they're talking about personal items and their character. But we're really very like-minded in this community. We're politically, we might be a little bit different, but we're all pulling for the same thing. And I am grateful that this group of people is here, and we have the quality of people we have, because it's so easy to run down local politicians. These are folks just like us. As I said, our friends and our neighbors. I'd like to review some of the protocol. If you pick these sheets up, you can take a look at it. I think before we do that, I'm going to acknowledge the volunteers that are here. I know you're probably aware this is volunteer-driven, and we've struggled lately to have enough forums in the area. We've had a few. League of Women Voters used to be excellent at it, but we no longer have a league at this point in time in Orleans County. So I'm grateful that this is organized by Lake Country Media. We have runners that are going to grab the papers. We have some students that are going to come in and do it, but you can see right now we have a variety of people that are just grabbing them from you and bringing them up. But we have screeners, and of course they're volunteers as well. They're sitting up at the front table. Chris Sartwell, Gary Kent, Chad Fabray, and then Judy Kohler is going to be our articulator. The screeners are going to evaluate the appropriateness of a question. And they're going to make sure we don't have overlap. It's not going to be personal. It's germane to administration of the village. So That's as opposed to something that's maybe a state question or a federal question. And we'll get into some of that in the guidelines, but I want to move through it quickly, but I'll give you an example so we don't have to visit again. If you ask a question like, what do you think about redistricting? Probably they're going to reject it. That would be something that the state administration might want to take a look at, not on a village level. If you ask something about, what are your views on the SAFE Act? Well, that's going to be, they're going to have to talk about it, depending on how many questions are here. They might allow that question through because the village board might be asked to pass a resolution in support of or in support of repeal of the SAFE Act. So it might be germane to village administration. Those are the kind of things they're going to decide. We want information that talks about our local future. Administration in the village of Albion. That's what we're hoping the questions are about, and that's what your answers will certainly be about. No personal attacks, no overlap. So they're going to take several questions. So when the question is asked, it might not be your exact wording, but hopefully the thought is in there. If you don't think it is, and it's appropriate, send up another question. And then they're going to make it concise, so we can ask the candidates. Every candidate will be asked the same question. They will answer the same question. There'll be timed responses. We've already talked about the timing, and there'll be a timer here, and when that time is up, he'll notify them. I'd like to introduce the candidates. You know most of the folks, and I think you're in support of some of them, but Kevin Doherty, Joyce Riley, Gary Casanas, Sandra Walter, Stan Ferrone, Jason Dragon, Eileen Banker. We talked about how to address each other, and it's really interesting. You can tell these are all like down-home folks and their village residents, or we're all close because, well, you can use Mr. and Mrs. to begin with, but I'd like to be called by my first name. So that'll tell you what they're all about, and as I said, they're friends and neighbors. We said before, write your questions on a pad, send it up. You can ask a question anytime during the forum. Just write it on, hold it up, it'll come up. You might have a question because somebody else asked a question or a particular candidate said something in their answer and it sparked something in you and you want to hear it addressed. Send it up. All questions will be asked to the candidates. I will be asking them. For clarification, the Village of Albion is a 5-person board. The mayor sits on one of the seats. It's an overlapping election so that you have 2 trustees that hold their positions, and then the off 2 years, you have 2 seats that are up. So this year, we have mayoral and 2 trustee seats. So when you're voting, that's what you're voting for. They're all 4-year terms. Voting is on March 20th, noon to 9 at the Village Hall. Registration deadline, if you've not registered, I believe is tomorrow at the Board of Elections, March 9th. So we're getting ready for opening statements. Each candidate will have 2 minutes for their opening statement, and we're going to begin with Kevin Doherty. So, part of your opening statement, I would like you to address why you decided to run for the position that you're running for.
Okay. Good evening. I'm running for mayor as a non-major party candidate because it's clear from the past few years that whatever we're doing isn't working, and party affiliation has nothing to do with success. In December, it was clear the incumbent mayor was not going to run again, and it made sense to take advantage of my experience, my availability, and no sitting mayor. When the parties chose their candidates, my experience didn't go away, so the reason to run remained. I have a proven and documented record of team playing, team building, and team leadership that are just what the Village of Albion needs now. As it says on my website, the people running this year and the folks who sat in the chairs at the Village, they're good people with good hearts. But pulling together for a common goal has just not been accomplished. The perception of limited value for high taxes, the lack of anywhere to go or anything to do, the concerns about municipal salaries, they're all valid, but they are symptoms, not the actual disease. The cure for Albion is more people and more accessible residential property. Development professionals often suggest that you must have businesses and industry to draw people, and I think that's exactly backwards. We need to have people who want stores and want restaurants and want shops. And happy people draw the attention of potential manufacturers. People with bad attitudes, no matter how justified, simply do not. My website and many of my conversations in this election period refer to Wegmans, whom I've admitted and I admired as a family corporation since I worked in Rochester 35 years ago. Shopping at Wegmans is a positive experience, and it is that way purposefully. Customer service is integral to every job title. We must be the Wegmans of small villages because people choose to go where they have good experiences. Please visit my website, a link to which is found on every Hub and Penny Saver ad. Thank you.
Thank you, Kevin. Now I'd like to ask Joyce Riley for your opening statement. You have 2 minutes. You don't have to use 2 minutes, but please include why you've chosen to run for the office you're running for.
My name is Joyce Riley, and I have chosen to run for mayor for the village of Albion for one primary reason. I love this village very much. It has given me a very sound education that has allowed me to go out into the world and become a professional, getting my BS, MS, and working 30 out of those 40 years as a manager, working with 25 to over 200 people, managing them and directing them so that they would be prosperous in their endeavors. My goal as a mayor would be to help reinvent this community, to listen to the voters as well as the business people in the community so that they understand and will be willing to work with us to reinvent. It's like turning a great big ship. Right now we have been stagnant for way too long. For the last 8 years, we cannot look and say we have made any great progress. In order to make progress, we need to bring in our young people and forget that what happened 30 years ago is no longer in existence. We cannot bring back landowners. We cannot bring back dales. That is part of history. Albion needs to move forward. It needs to think of other ways to reinvent itself, one of which would be working together with our within the village. And I would talk more about it on the second question, because it talks about what the community feels are its concerns. So I've been listening to the community. I want you to know that I hear you, and I would be there to work for you and provide direction.
Thank you, Joyce. My apologies for not bringing out the microphone earlier. I had forgotten. Kevin, I see clearly you didn't need it. I'm not certain if you do it in the future. And I should have asked. Can you hear me in the back? I chose not to use it. I was trying to project. But I can talk louder. But if that's good, and those that choose to use it, please don't hesitate to ask for the microphone. We have 2 of them up there. Now I'd like to invite Gary Casanas for your opening statement, and please include why you've chosen to run for the position you're running for.
Okay, I'm a little uncertain about the microphone. Unlike most people here, my family is not from Albion. I was born in Philadelphia, so I wanted to take a minute or two and introduce myself. I worked light construction and maintenance as a teen before college. I learned to work with my hands. I learned what it meant to put in a full day's work. I came to Western New York State in 1980 to the University of Rochester for graduate studies in economics. I hold 3 college degrees. I worked at Strong Hospital, and by 26, I had a staff of medical data analysts. Later at Blue Cross, I became a manager with a $750,000 budget. My wife and I were living in Rochester when we started a family. We decided, after brief observation, we would not put children we loved in the Rochester City School District. So in the 1990s, we chose Albion as an ideal place to raise our children. I had an operation back in 2001. It left me with nerve damage. After a year trying to continue work, I had to go out on disability, and our family income dropped by 60%. That's about enough about me. There are few jobs more important than working with our village to make sure that we can cope with today while we plan for tomorrow. With my background in finance and analysis, my experience in management, my life experience raising a family on a shoestring, my experience working with my hands, I believe I'm ideally suited to meet the responsibilities of a village trustee. Since I have no other commitments for my time, I can put full time into this. I'm willing to meet with anyone, any place, any time to discuss village issues. I showed that in my prior term as a village trustee. I would welcome the chance to show it again.
Thank you, Gary. I'd like to invite Sandra Walter for your opening statement, and please include why you've chosen to run for the position you're running for.
I'm going to try and do this without the microphone. Can everyone hear me?
No, you need to use the microphone, please. Thank you.
Oh, okay. Talking about myself isn't an easy thing for me to do, but I understand that many of you don't know me and may be curious about how my background and experience would relate to a trustee position on the village board. I am a longtime resident of Albion. I graduated from Albion High School, as did my children. I have been involved in community activities over the years. I have attended village meetings in the past. And I was appointed to the grievance committee. And last winter, I spent my Saturdays assisting the Hands for Hope in providing food and winter coats and clothing to the county residents. And unfortunately, most of the residents that I saw were in the village of Albion. That became a concern for me. I decided to run because for a long time I have seen that there is a need for responsive and responsible leadership in the village. I worked for a number of years during my career in mortgage servicing, and I managed a staff of 25 people, and it is within that job that I learned how to be, and not how to be, but the importance of being fiscally responsible and providing a responsible budget for people to live under. I feel that right now, we need the help of everyone in the community, business as well as residents. And without that combined help, I am afraid that we will gradually die away and cease to exist as a village. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Sandy. Stan, would you like to give your opening statement? Please include why you've decided to run for the position you're running for.
Okay, first of all, I'd like to thank Mike and all the volunteers. This is a very good program they put on today. My name is Stanley Frowen. I live in the village many years. All my children were raised in the village. And why I'm running for trustee, I want to go back 4 years ago. I started going to village board meetings just to see what they were all about. As I sit there, I heard a variety of positive and negative subjects being brought up for discussion. Then I would go home, I would sit around thinking about what I just heard, thinking what I might do to solve the negative and expand on the positive. Then I thought if I ran and got on the village board as a trustee, I could be more help than just sitting home thinking of ideas. So sitting in the meetings with no input. So I decided to run for a trustee spot. Now today, I know we came a long way. We still have issues that need to be addressed, which is to be expected. We also have a variety of positive projects that we're working on and have seen positive change throughout the work. I can be more help to the village and the community by sitting on the village board as a trustee than I could be sitting at home thinking of solutions. I do have a lot of time. I have been, in my last 4 years, holding meetings for anybody that wants to come into the office, discuss problems, any questions. So I think, like I said, I could be a lot more help staying on the village board as a trustee than sitting home. Thank you.
Thank you, Stan. Jason, I invite you to present your opening statement, and please include why you've chosen to run for the position you're running for.
Hello, my name is Jason Dragon. I was born in the village and my parents were from the area. I was somewhat away from Albion for a decade or so in the Buffalo and Rochester areas for college and when I started work. But for the past 20 years, I've either been driving the long commute to the other side of Rochester or telecommuting from my home on East Avenue. I decided to run for village office with Joyce and Sandy for two primary reasons. The first one would be that we have too many uncontested elections in this county. People deserve a choice come election time, so in our caucus, we needed somebody, so I stepped up. The second reason why I wanted to run is village residents continue to be treated unfairly when it comes to how much property tax we have to pay. Excluding schools, we pay a property tax rate that is double that of non-village residents. This has scared residents away, lowered property values, and discouraged investment in the village. We need to change the situation so that the village stops declining and starts growing again. We've seen this issue discussed somewhat over the years, but we need more real action.
Thank you, Jason. Eileen, I would invite you to give your opening statement. Please include why you've chosen to run for the position you're running for.
Good evening, everyone. First, I'd like to thank the Lake Country Penny Saver and Orleans Hub for sponsoring this forum, along with those of you that have volunteered your time. Thank you. For many of you that, if you don't know me, my name is Eileen Banker. I'm married to Dale Banker. Both of us are lifelong residents of the village of Albion. Actually, the street that I currently live on with my husband, Clarendon Street, ironically is the same street that I was raised on. We have one daughter, Stephanie, who's a graduate of Albion High School. She works for a superintendent of Brockport Schools. Our son-in-law, Eric, is a Monroe County Sheriff's Deputy, and we have two beautiful grandsons. I worked at Anchor Bank when it first opened in 1987, working most of my 15 years in the accounting department. After I left Anchor Bank, I decided to attend college. I had never done that. When I got out of school, I got married. So I attended GCC and earned my associate's degree with honors in business management. After graduation, I was hired at Batavia Downs as a human resource manager. Then in 2006, I accepted a position with Assemblyman Steve Hawley, where today I'm currently his chief of staff. The reason why I'm running for mayor is I think it's important to be involved in your community. I've always been involved in our community. I have actively supported the Albion Volunteer Fire Department since the day I met my husband in 1979. I'm involved with I'm a member of the Community Action of Genesee and Orleans. I'm a member of the Advisory Council at GCC. I was first elected to the Village of Albion Board in 2010, serving as village trustee, then re-elected in 2014, serving as the deputy mayor. Being on the board for the last 2 terms has enlightened me with the struggles municipalities face. It's not easy, as I'm going to be on the board and I'm going to make huge changes. You are one on the board, and change is sometimes not feasible. Our current board is not divided in any way. We are united with the same philosophy: what can we do best for the village and its residents? We may not always agree with one another in discussing issues, but we always respect each other's opinions. I feel what we have accomplished and what we have in planning stages is moving us in the right direction.
Thank you. We have at least 2 questions that are going to be submitted. They've been submitted by the editorial staff. We've kind of consolidated them a little bit. The candidates are aware of them, they're aware there's going to be a question similar to this, and I'm now going to ask the first one. Joyce, you were going to be the first one to answer the question. Andrew, you have 1 minute.
Thank you.
Thank you. Keep me right on task, will you? You know, I slip away. What, in your opinion, is the most pressing concern, the hot topic, so to speak, in the village today?
I think the hot topics in the village today are actually twofold. What I've been hearing from people that I've been talking with in the community, there's concern about safety and there's concern about fairness. The concern about safety is really a multifaceted item, because as many of you are aware, there was a report out that was done by the county regarding consolidation of our police force. Now, we realize that our police department consumes a lot of our money, and our community is satisfied with the way that they're doing the current policing. And I'm actually here to say to you, please take another look, because as we have a decreasing tax base, we're not going to be able to afford this over the long term. We need an active government that is actually going to look at to see if we can deliver services in a different way. And my time is up.
Thank you very much.
I actually need more.
I have felt like that myself.
Yes.
Gary, question to you is, and you have 1 minute, what in your opinion is the most pressing concern, the hot topic in the village?
Okay, can I check the microphone for a second? I just don't want to hold it too close or far away. What's the right?
A little closer?
Closer.
Closer?
You need a little more volume.
Yeah.
Oh dear. Okay, thank you for your patience. So, I believe there is no one hot topic in the village today. I think the biggest single challenge we have is understanding why our kids grow up and leave Albion. We need opportunities for our children so they don't have to leave home. We don't want them leaving their community behind to build a life somewhere else. Next big problem I think we have to deal with is our local combination of budget, services, and tax base, like Joyce, that's a concern. I'm sorry, did I just break the rules, sir?
It's fine. Absolutely.
Yeah. We need a village that's financially viable. Part of the process, unfortunately, is dealing with the New York State system that they have for grants. It seems like small municipalities need grants to survive. Beyond that, I'd like to see the village of Albion be a complete community. Dining and entertainment options, shopping venues, a thriving downtown. I don't care if it's business or residential downtown, but I want them to thrive.
Thank you very much. Sandy, what in your opinion is the most pressing concern, the hot topic in the village today?
Well, Joyce and I have been going out together, so we basically have been hearing the same issues over and over again, which is fairness and safety. Fairness as far as being treated equitably by your village government, and being able to be heard appears to be an issue too. A lot of people feel that even though they bring their concerns are overlooked or pushed aside. Safety, of course, in this day and age is a big, big concern for everyone. And I agree with Joyce that everyone does love the police force, and it is great to have such an outstanding police force. But we need to look down the road, not only at them, but at everything, and make sure that we are sustainable as a community.
Thank you. Stan, what in your opinion is the most pressing concern, the hot topic in the village today?
Well, everybody's talking about safety, which I'm going to still continue on that. As I wrote, there are many worthwhile topics, but the one that stands out to me consists of the Albion Police Force. In today's time, there's a big crisis around drug-related emergencies. The Albion Police are beginning training in carrying and administering Narcan. This is a great program. It has a potential to save many lives. In 2007, there were over 50 drug-related emergency calls, and so far this year, there has been 12 related calls. Yes, there are a lot of bigger projects going on in the village of Albion, but I consider this is one of the most important. And along with that, we do have a great fire department in this village. So along with the police department and fire department, I think there can be many lives saved. Thank you.
Thank you. Jason, what in your opinion is the most important or pressing topic in the village today?
I'm getting to be close to 50 now, so in about those 50 years, what I've observed over time is it's pretty apparent. It's a gradual decline in the village. People are choosing not to invest in here. They're not renovating homes. They're not building new homes. They're tearing down homes, and they're building new homes out inside the country, or in the town of Albion, town of Gaines, and around. And I think that situation needs to change. Because it's great to live in a village. There's a lot of positive upsides to it, but we need to make our village more economically feasible for somebody to go and say, I want to build a home there, and then if I want to sell my home, I want to get money back that I put into it. And that would be what I think would be the biggest issue that affects the village.
Thank you. Eileen, what in your opinion is the most pressing concern or the hot topic in the village today?
Well, when we were walking around, I actually had several residents ask me about how do we attract new businesses in our downtown area and what's being done about the zombie properties, which we have approximately 40 of them in the village. The Albion Housing and Economic Development Corporation is a local development corporation, LDC, formed to deal with housing and economic development issues in the village. The corporation, of course, is a 501c3 and not-for-profit corporation, which allows it to take donations and apply for grants. The LDC consists of 5 board members, 2 of which are from the village board and the rest are the community. So it's a collaborative effort. The LDC had 2 properties just recently donated, to which one was sold for redevelopment and the second is sale pending. They are acting as a zombie task force as part of the $75,000 zombie grant the village received to deal with vacant and abandoned houses in the village, which is, again, like I say, 40.
Thank you. Kevin, what in your opinion is the most pressing concern or the hot topic in the village today?
I obviously have been talking with different people than the Democrats have been talking to. I think the biggest issue is the perception of decline, and we've touched on it. People are moving out, the population is aging, our tax base is reduced. And those are things that we have to deal with directly. Why do people move out? Because they get better jobs someplace else, but because they can build a better house somewhere else. They get more services when you're in Monroe County. We need to change that. We need to fix that. And we go back to the previous conversation. We need to be the Wegmans. We need to be the place people want to come to because our village officials, our tax structure, the community institutions like the school and the library need to be welcoming and need to be places where you want to be, as Jason mentioned, where you want to raise your kids. That's what we need to do.
Thank you very much. This is the second question from the editorial staff. It's a 90-second question. Derek DeSantis, you're going to be the first one to answer it. You don't have to take up the 90 seconds, but you have 90 seconds to use. How do you propose providing the same or improved level of service when dealing with a stagnant tax base?
Could you repeat that, please?
And I will clarify it also. It's a stagnant tax base, not declining. How do you propose providing the same or improved level of service or quality of service when dealing with a stagnant tax base?
Thank you.
You're welcome.
It's not an easy question. It's something that we've had to deal with before. Is this on? I'm having trouble with this microphone. I'm sorry.
Where's the other microphone?
The short answer is that you have trouble trying to enhance services in any situation where you have a stagnant tax base. You really can't provide additional services unless you find an efficiency somewhere else in the community to get resources to do it. We can promise sidewalks, we can promise we'll repave our roads, we can promise to be a service-based community, but we can't do it without robbing from somewhere else. So what we need to do as a community, what we need to do as a village, is we have to decide what businesses the village should be in. Are we in the business of shoveling the downtown sidewalks? The answer is yes. Do we plow our roads? The answer is yes. Do we have a police force? The answer is yes. We need to decide which of that is our core business, which we are going to fund, which things are we going to keep going with, and which things are we going to stick with. Now, It's very easy to say we should provide more services. It would be nice to do that. There's a thing called the 2% tax cap. We can't raise our taxes. We just can't do it. So we have to seek for efficiencies. That's really the only answer that we have. Now, we can share services with other communities as we're doing. The Holly bucket truck is a good example, tree trimming. Our police force and our fire services work with other communities. That's the kind of thing that we have to do.
Thank you very much.
Sandy, how do you propose providing the same or improved level of service when dealing with a stagnant tax base?
It's functional?
Yeah.
I think I would begin, first of all, by actively engaging our village employees. They would be the go-to people that could tell me where we could possibly cut expenses. They are the ones that are doing the job on a daily basis, and they understand what needs to be done and what can be done. The other thing I would do is I would engage village residents in this process, because without the village residents giving their input, we aren't going to get anywhere with anything. So that is what I would start right there.
Okay, thank you. Stan, how do you propose providing the same or improved level of service when dealing with a stagnant tax base?
Well, just like it was said by Gary, shared services is a big thing. We could, with the village, could share services with towns, Gaines, Albion, and like to do roads, sidewalks. Another big thing that we are looking into and we are doing is grants. We do have a grant writer the village did hire, and that's brings in quite a bit of money. We just have a $300,000 grant that was announced last week. So, and that's going to take out $300,000 of the taxpayers. Hiring the right people is a big thing. Our new DPW supervisor this year saved the taxpayers over $500,000. So working with the grants, working with the right employees, and they'll help the tax base.
Thank you. Jason, how do you propose providing the same or improved level of service when dealing with a stagnant tax base?
Right. The tax base in the village of Albion is stagnant. The tax base outside of the villages in this county is not stagnant. In the past decade, the tax base has grown 10 to 20%. What it is people are choosing to move outside of villages. They view villages as too expensive. Why is this? One of the biggest reasons is just how the state laws work, is for how municipalities can tax. As a village resident, you're paying the exact same county tax as people outside of villages, but you don't get those services because the villages do them themselves. We have to stop that. It worked fine for years, but times have changed, and government needs to adapt. Change can be uncomfortable. I know people are concerned about that. My father used to work for the village. I have no animosity to village employees, but in my career, I've had to change jobs 10 times. Having the possibility that, you might have to rearrange who people work for is, in my viewpoint, is not that big of a thing. I think we want to make sure that we get the situation in good shape so that the village thrives for hundreds of years to come, so that people don't keep moving out of the village, and we have a good place to keep living. Thank you.
Thank you. Eileen, how do you propose providing the same or improved level of service when dealing with a stagnant tax base?
We do ask our department heads to look to the future of what would be needed and ask them to plan ahead. We ask them to look further than this year or next year. We ask them to look 10 years down the road. If there's a truck that is needed, we ask them to put money in their budget so we can pay for it, not all at once and not hit the taxpayers all at once, but progressively. We have shared services. We do that consistently with other villages, other towns in the county. We recently had our Vector truck, for instance, is one that is 16 years old right now. We're looking to buy a new Vector truck. It's used by every single municipality in this county. I had mentioned to the department head, our highway superintendent, maybe you should consider asking Senator Ort for a SAMS grant. He asked Senator Ort for a SAMS grant. We applied for it. We got a $300,000 grant. With the $80,000 that we'll probably get for the old Vector truck, now we're going to be buying a new one that, again, is going to be used throughout the entire county and at no cost to the local taxpayers. So this is what we do, and we ask our employees all the time, you know, look to see what you're going to do. Let's do more shared services.
Thank you. Kevin, how do you propose providing the same or improved level of service when dealing with a stagnant tax base?
But was a 12-year member of the Albion School Board, and they're not the only ones that do it, but as Eileen mentioned, you need to look at the long-term picture. First of all, you have to define whether the level of service that we are used to is reasonable. Should we be doing more? Should we be doing less? Not only should the budget look forward, we should also look forward to what the expectations are. Now, when it comes to individual budget years, we have the same decisions to make that everybody else has to make. Which health insurance are we going to use? What are we going to do for our general health, our general insurance coverage? Are we going to buy or are we going to lease? Are we going to bond it or are we going to borrow it through the Vector company? Those are the things that have to be done. I will admit that you have to absolutely have the input of your employees, but those decisions are decisions which are to be made by your elected officials. That's what they're elected for. You cannot slough it off and say, okay, employees, why don't you write the grant? If we have a grant writer, why is the individual department head writing their grants? We need to put business practices. Now, don't get me wrong. A government is not a business, and it's not a one-for-one. But you can put business practices in specific locations, and that's how you deal with your budget issues.
Thank you. Joyce, how do you propose providing the same or improved level of service when dealing with a stagnant tax base?
Actually, after listening to all of the my members here speak, there's bits and pieces of everything that they've said that I can agree with. You really need to start off with the right people in the right job, following the right process. You actually, even though a village is not a business, it needs to be run with a lot of good business practices. For instance, I agree with Kevin in terms of if you have a grant writer, why is the grant writer not writing? And when the grants are done, why is not the department head for whom that grant is written following up with that grant and making sure that we don't miss anything? Because in the past, grants have been written and we've gotten the money, and then the money has gone to someplace other than intended. The other thing is relationships. We can't, as a village, take anything off the table when it comes to the health of the village. The village, because if we're not solvent, if we're not looking to the future, if we're not saying that if we keep raising taxes at the rate we are to pay village employees, then we're going to be a non-village in the near future. So we need to be proactive, put everything on the table, and also consider changing the way we do things. A paradigm shift.
Thank you very much. That was the last question that we're going to ask from the editorial staff. So the next question came from the floor. I'm going to read the question. It's a little bit lengthy. And before Sandy begins answering, I'm going to take care of some business that I was a little remiss about. Seeing the superintendent of the school standing out there made me think about it. This is the question. There's been discussion of the formation of an Orleans County Water Authority. The village would be the supplier. What is your position on the village undertaking this? Give it some thought. Sandy, you were going to be the first one to address the issue. 90 seconds. It is a 1-minute question. Thank you. Once again. After we pledged the flag, what I meant to say was, you observe the exits from this room. Generally where you came in is an exit, but there are additional exits. If we had to clear the room quickly, follow the exit signs. When you get out in the hall, there are lit exit signs with arrows pointing your way out of the building. Thank you very much. I'm going to read this again to you.
Thank you.
There has been discussion on the formation of an Orleans County Water Authority. The village would be the supplier. What is your position on the village undertaking this?
I think that we should use all of our assets, all of our village assets to the utmost ability. One of those assets is our water treatment plant. So I would probably, well, I know I would. I would ask our water treatment plant operator his opinions on how we could supply water to the entire county, and also what would be the expense to the village itself, because all of those items need to be taken into consideration. Is this going to be a benefit to the village itself, or is the water and the money going to go to the county? So these would be concerns that would have to be addressed.
Thank you. Stan, there's been discussions of the formation of an Orleans County Water Authority. The village would be the supplier. What is your position on the village undertaking this?
Right now, that's something that we have been talking about. There's a lot more discussion and a lot more looking into this. As I stand right now, yes, I am for that. It would save the village a lot of money. I'm going to say a lot, it's going to save the village some money. But I say it's something that has to be looked into a lot deeper before I even make a decision, yes or no on that. So that's really about all I can say about it. It's something that's got to be looked into.
Thank you. Jason? There's been discussion on the formation of an Orleans County Water Authority. The village would be the supplier. What is your position on the village undertaking this?
Yes, that would be something definitely to look into. It sounds like a sensible idea, because if we look to the east, you have the Monroe County Water Authority, and you look to the west, you have the water out of Buffalo. Those are big organizations there. You have to think about, can a village of 5,000 or 6,000 people, 5,000 or 6,000 people support a water treatment facility all by itself? Will that be viable going long term? To make sure, because we want not only for it to pump water, but we also want it to pump safe water. We don't want to wake up one morning and find out we're another Flint, Michigan. So definitely, you would think that would be an asset in our county that we could expand to other towns. That would make a lot of sense for long-term viability of the water supply.
Thank you. Eileen, there has been discussion on the formation of an Orleans County Water Authority. The village would be the supplier. What is your position on the village undertaking this?
I believe right now there's a study going on about this, and I think we have to wait and see exactly what the study brings out. There's going to be a lot of questions as far as, if we can pump enough water, if we're going to be if we're just going to be in charge of the water, if we're going to have any responsibility with infrastructure. There's a lot of questions that haven't been answered yet, and we have to make sure that our plant is up to par in order to pump as much water as what's going to be needed.
Thank you. Kevin, there's been discussion on the formation of an Orleans County Water Authority. The village would be the supplier. What is your position on the village undertaking this?
That's in the category of yes, but. Yes, I think we have to look at that. Yes, we have an asset. But as Eileen points out, the devil is in the details. Regrettably, the village of Albion does not have a sterling track record on negotiating. If we own that asset, we not only need to make sure that our costs are covered, but that investment that the people of the village of Albion have made since 1960, whenever it was when I was in third grade, when they opened it, that has to be recognized. And whether that's because in a manner of discounts or however we do that, yes. So it's yes, but yes, we need to look at that. We need to look at collaboration at the county level at a number of things. But we need to be careful what we lock into for a long-term agreement.
Okay, thank you. Joyce, there's been discussion on the formation of an Orleans County Water Authority, and the village would be the supplier. What is your position on the village undertaking this?
It's really kind of twofold. One is who actually is going to own the authority, because right now, for the village, it is a moneymaker. It helps us meet our debt. So the other thing is we really need to vet all of the issues that are associated with it. The devil is in the details. Once again, I agree with Kevin on that. It sounds good, but having gone out to the water treatment plant itself, I think before they talk about an authority, they might want to consider updating a facility that has not been updated since it's been established. And so you're kind of putting the cart before the horse. And we need to kind of, in consideration, look at where the current water water department is before we talk about creating an authority when we don't know what kind of what we're going to have to do to update that plant, and it needs updating.
Thank you. Gary, there has been discussion of the formation of an Orleans County Water Authority. The village would be the supplier. What is your position on the village undertaking this?
Well, I think it's an excellent opportunity for the village. I wish I had a half an hour to actually talk about this. What we should be doing as a village, I believe, is we should be expanding our water lines. We have an existing water line to Holly. There's a small water line to Lindenville. We should be putting a water line through to Shelby. We should be doing that now, independent of pursuing a water authority. Now, the concern I have with the water authority and the concern I have with Albion running the water treatment plant, 30 seconds, is that that's a serious asset. And I happen to believe personally it's a county-sized asset. We need 10 years to train a chief water treatment plant operator. And a village with only 3 water treatment plant operators can't support that the long run. So we have to turn that around, and we have to make that a larger shared asset for a bigger catchment area. So.
Thank you very much. We've heard some great answers and some great information from each of you. This is a 1-minute question. Stan, you will begin. Please tell us specifically areas you would look for consolidation of services in with other towns and villages.
Well, we do a lot of that right now, but I would like to expand our road work. We, use their paver, they use our paver. I mean, mainly employees. We, like I say, just basically employees. They use our vac equipment. Basically, I really don't have too much to say. I wish I did, but this caught me off guard here. But basically, an employees, equipment would help a lot on consolidation. Thank you.
Thank you.
Not good, but thank you.
Jason? Please tell us specifically areas you would look for consolidation of services in with other towns and villages.
And county too. Basically, I think that the basic services that everybody gets, policing, fire, water more and more each day, streets, basically these days everybody gets a very similar level of service. So I think all of that is open to either consolidation, you have more, or you have like one agency throughout the county, or you have regional agencies. I couldn't imagine, could you have a one streets department for the village of Albion, the town of Gaines, and the town of Albion where everybody pays the exact same rate for it? I think that's a perfectly fine idea. I would not want to consolidate. What I think the village should focus on are the services that we receive uniquely in the village. So, like, I love the sidewalk plow that goes by in front of my house every day. You see so many people compared to before the state rebuilt the highway. They're walking on that stretch. You have people in electric vehicles driving down that stretch. It's a unique village service. And thank you very much.
Thank you. Eileen, please tell us specifically areas you would look for consolidation of services in with other towns and villages.
As Stan tried to say,
I lost my train.
we do a lot of shared services. We contract with the Village of Holly Police Department, our police chief, and we get a stipend for that. We contract with the Village of Holly sewer plant, and we get a stipend for that. We also do the sewer for the Village of Elba. We do construction work as far as infrastructure work, if there's a break or a water break in any of the pipes in Elba. We're still looking for ways that we can actually share more services. We still do the sharing of all sorts of equipment, which is constant with all of our department heads and our departments. Our village fire department is currently looking at forming their own fire district, which would be a consolidation of the Village of Albion, the town of Albion, and the town of Gaines. So we are looking at different ways to save funding.
Thank you. Kevin, please tell us specifically areas you would look for consolidation of services in with other towns and villages.
We clearly are in the equipment sharing business, but we need to take that shared services farther than actually DPW functions. What about countywide health insurance, buying as a group that's twice as large as any of us are now? Countywide liability insurance, purchasing groups. And most of us are members of the Joint Federal Purchasing Group, but there are a number of things that don't fit in there. Training across the board. The clerk's training and the codes officer training, in addition to the safety training for our folks in the DPW work. Common contracting, what if we have a unified contract with CSEA for highway workers? I mean, that sort of thing it takes long-term thoughtfulness, but actually that's, once again, what you do in a commercial operation. So we need to look at those and more.
Thank you, Kevin. Joyce, please tell us specifically areas you would look for consolidation of services in with other towns and villages.
Besides the services that are already mentioned, I feel personally that nothing should be off the table in terms of consolidation. That we should look at everything. If not consolidation, we should look at revamping how we use those services so that they're more efficient and that they're less costly to us. And I think sometimes we back off because we feel that we can't do without a specific service, or we don't recognize that, let's say, for instance, between the hours of 12 to 8, we don't get that many calls for the police. And so when you don't get that call, maybe we should look at revamping the hours that they work and cutting back so that we can save, that way. And then also, and when we look at these shared services, are we, you know what, I'm a good bargainer, but I'm not the best person to go and negotiate contracts. I think when you're talking about shared services between different counties, we need to have someone that is their kind of job to negotiate so that everyone gets the best bang for their buck. I think sometimes we just give away the farm and we need to pull back and really look at how these relationships are beneficial to the village as well as to the other party.
Thank you, Joyce. Gary, please tell us specifically areas you would look for consolidation of services in with other towns and villages.
That's an interesting question. The first thing you have to do is you have to understand the difference between consolidation and shared services. Consolidation is a true merger of an operation. If we consolidated the DPW in the town and the village, we would have a single DPW department. Shared services is different. It's when you have a vacuum truck in Albion, or you have a boom truck in Holly, and you use that over a larger area. We can only consolidate in areas where it's efficient to bring a service together. For instance, I'm uncertain that we could consolidate DPW with an area as far out as Gaines, as well as the village and the town of Albion. But, that said, those are major areas where we can find efficiencies. If we can do things like consolidate salt storage between the village and the town of Albion, then over time, we can save money.
Thank you very much. I would urge you to use the microphone if you can. We're having difficulty in the back of the room, folks hearing you. And we'll just have to play with the different mics and adjust them. They do work, not equally well. Sandy, please tell us specifically areas you would look for consolidation of services in with other towns and villages.
In my opinion, any service that's being done in the village should be considered and looked at for possible consolidation. The fire district issue that just was brought up at the village board meeting, I think is a good step in the right direction. However, when we get involved in consolidation, we have to make sure that this is going to be a benefit to the village, and that we aren't going to lose a benefit that we would have wanted to have kept. Office staff is a place to look at consolidation too. We have several, I'm sure, several clerk treasurers in the towns, in the villages. It may be that we should be looking at everything possible to save money for the village and to maintain our services at a good level.
Thank you very much. Before I read this question, and Jason, you will be the first to address the issue, it's a 90-second question. If you have any other questions, please send them up. If they've got you interested in anything else that he has set up, we're going to have room for a few more questions before they do wrap-ups, so feel free to send them up. Jason, please state your opinion on recreation for youth and senior citizens in our village. For example, reopening all the parks for summer programs.
I would say that that's one of the good areas that a village should be involved in. In the village area, you are living more closely together. You don't have all the yard space that you would have outside of the village area. So I think our village parks are very important for village life. So I would fully support shifting more of a focus onto those type of services which are unique to the villages. Thank you.
Thank you. Eileen, please state your opinion for recreation for youth and senior citizens in our village. For example, reopening all the parks for summer programs.
I think that the recreation programs that we have currently now are good programs. I think that we're going to be able to build on them with the new spray park that is going to be built at Bullard Park. I think we have to wait first to see exactly what we're going to need as far as personnel and employees at the spray park, because I'm sure we're going to need them. And I think somehow we should be able to consolidate some of the programs that we have at the park for the recreation park into the spray park and utilize both. You know, I think we're going to find that the kids are really going to attract towards the spray park. I think it's something that the kids are really going to enjoy, and I'm pleased that we got that grant. It took several years to get it, but we did finally get it, and we have a great group that is working on totally figuring out exactly where everything needs to go. So
Thank you.
My thought.
Kevin, please state your opinion on recreation for youth and senior citizens in our village. For example, reopening all the parks for summer programs.
I think that's one of the things that has to be determined in terms of priority. Everything in the village budget cannot be a priority. And as has been stated before, we can't go back to 1962 when I was a parks user. I'm not 100% sure that our neighborhood parks are where they need to be. And if they are where they need to be, if they have the equipment for today's recreation and today's play, that's certainly something to look at. And I mean, the general rule is more things for kids to do is better than less things for kids to do. But they have to be something that we can control. It has to be something, not control to tell the kids how to play, but control so that we don't have vandalism, so we don't have bullying, so we don't have those kinds of things that happen not only in parks, but sometimes happen even on the playgrounds here at the school. Relative to the seniors, I'm not sure that the spray park is going to be useful to them, although I don't know. I mean, I'm getting to be a senior. It may be, we'll find out. But it would seem as though that we could expand the summer recreation program to include program or activities that happen regularly at the library, for example. It's an accessible building, it's in the center of the village. Or at the grammar school in their conference room. I think the village can take the lead in programming for seniors. We're not able yet to have our multi-generational community center. Maybe that will happen. But in the meantime, we can certainly look at those program options.
Thank you, Kevin. Joyce, please state your opinion on recreation for youth and senior citizens in our village, for example, reopening all the parks for summer programs.
I agree with opening the parks for the summer program, but I think when you look at the fact that we currently have 14.1% senior citizens in the village of Albion, and there's little or nothing except Meals on Wheels and maybe a bingo game here and there. I think with an aging population that is expected to be around 25% in the next 40 years, that we need to think, we're always going to think about our children, but we need to plan now for our seniors, get a senior center that is, get someone who's interested in developing that. I would have loved to have seen the Swan Library, instead of being sold, that it was converted to a community building that attracted seniors. Because seniors, believe it or not, they have money, they have limited income, and they would come downtown and they would work and spend their money. Our children, we're always going to try and provide for them. I think what we're doing up at Bullock Park is great. I do think, however, that some of our local parks have been stripped of some of the things that people enjoy doing in order to make them a non-congregational place. And we want kids to congregate for fun. We don't want them to congregate for drugs, but we do want them to feel that they have a place in the community that they can go and play games, period.
Thank you.
I'm not sure if I'm going to be able to use this. Let me set it down.
It'll
help. Try it, it'll help.
It will help.
Everybody else is using it.
Okay, I'm going to try it again.
That's a perfect distance.
Everybody's
Work
doing
out?
it.
Thanks.
Gary, please state your opinion on recreation for youth and senior citizens in our village. For example, reopening all the parks for summer programs.
Well, I think, for instance, that among things that are discretionary, among things that we have a choice of whether or not we're going to do them, police and fire, we have no choice. Recreation as a discretionary activity should be right at the top of our list. It's something we do for our community, it's something we do for our families, it's something that can bring people to the community. Parents who see Albion as a community will be attracted to that kind of thing. It makes no sense whatsoever to spend $500,000 on Bullard Park and not make the best use of that as we possibly can here in the village. So we should be having just a dynamite youth program there. Now, I would rather have one good centralized youth program than several youth programs that are perhaps not funded the way they should be or decentralized. One thing that I personally think is a black eye for the community is that we got rid of our senior program. There was a senior program we had that took maybe $1,000 a year to support. We got rid of it, and we replaced it with nothing. Well, I think we should reinstate that. I think it should be something that we provide for our community. We provide for our people.
Thank you. Sandra, please state your opinion on recreation for youth and senior citizens in our village.
For example, reopening all of the parks for summer programs.
I have to take a while to think about this for a bit. Our children, as Joyce said, we will always take care of our children. They are one of our most important assets. So are our senior citizens. Both must be provided for. So which becomes a priority? Tough decisions. I would love to see every park in the village of Albion open and available for not only the children, but also for the senior citizens to go and relax and enjoy the sunshine and enjoy the laughter of the children playing around them. That would be the ideal situation as far as I'm concerned.
Thank you. Stan, please state your opinion on recreation for youth and senior citizens in our village. For example, reopening all the parks for summer programs.
Yes, I do agree with opening all the parks for the summer program. But one thing I'd like to see is Bullard Park built up. You got the spray park coming in, we have the grants. One reason for that is we were talking earlier about zombie houses in the village. We need more people in the village. Right now, up in Oakfield, they're building a stamp plant, which a lot of you know, hopefully know about. It's going to be a big plant. There's going to be people relocating out in the rural areas. They're going to be looking for houses. My thing is, you rebuild Bullard Park, make it look good. You drive through Albion, you have children. So what are you going to say? Do I want to live in Albion where there's a nice park for my kids, a nice school for the kids, or someplace else without a park? So my thing is, let's get Bullard Park open, let's get it built up, let's publicize it. Senior citizens, I agree 100% with Gary. We need more stuff for senior citizens. We do have a senior citizen picnic, which the village has been going back and forth with that. So I think that should be reinstated. I'm a senior citizen. I'd like to see more for me too. But the big thing is, let's get a nice looking park. I think we'll draw people into Albion to get some of these zombie houses built. There you go.
Thank you. Eileen, you were going to be the first to answer this question. It's a 90-second question. Thank you. The recent police study recommended the department employ only one officer on duty between midnight and 6 a.m. This is part of cost cutting. Are you in favor of this reduction of police protection overnight?
I'm not. I think in the day and age of what the police have to deal with now with possible shootings, drug overdoses, the drug activity is increasing in the villages, not only in the villages but in the counties. And I think that having one officer on duty is a safety issue. I think that not only for that purpose, but for the fact that it could cost you more money to have one officer on duty. If that officer were to call in sick, then you've got to call in another officer that's going to have overtime. If an officer is on vacation time, again, you're going to have to cover that position with overtime, so it's not cost effective. My main concern is safety. We have to have safety for our officers and safety for the residents in the village. I think if you ask people when you're walking around or talking to people, they don't want to see a decrease in police officers. They want to see an increase of police officers. So that's my opinion.
Thank you. Kevin, the recent police study recommended the department employ only one officer on duty between midnight and 6 a.m. This is part of cost cutting. Are you in favor of this reduction of police protection overnight?
I'm in favor of looking at all options. And before you can look at the options, you have to run the numbers. Eileen is absolutely right. It's difficult to have a single officer in the village. As the technician for your 911 system, I am familiar with the number of times that the lone officer in Holly has to get help. I don't know what the sheriff's staffing is going to be as we go forward, irregardless of the consolidation or coordination study. But certainly we can look at where we schedule police officers. Maybe we need to have 2 full-time equivalent people on overnight, but we also have to have more people on in the evening. Maybe we have somebody that works a split shift. I'm not 100% sure. So there's no easy answer because I don't have all of the numbers, but that certainly is something we need to look at.
Thank you. Joyce, the recent police study recommended the department employ only 1 officer on duty between midnight and 6 a.m. This is part of cost cutting. Are you in favor of this reduction of police protection overnight?
Actually, I am, and I would actually go one step further. I would say that would be an area where we could have some shared services with the sheriff department. I think that if you were to look at the numbers for the number of calls between 12 and 8 o'clock in the morning, you'll find that they're negligible. The village of Albion is basically less than 3 square miles. Within that 3 square miles, you have a sheriff task force of about 24 people. You have the village of Albion that has, right now it's 11, but it's normally 12, and you have the state police. And at any given point in time, if there's any kind of emergency, it's always the nearest officer that would go and answer a call. I think a lot of people are fearful of what they think they might lose, but if you were to take one small step, if you were to take one small step and say, okay, we know that our police department costs a lot of money. We don't want to get rid of them, but let's look at a different way of doing business. That is the only way. I'm going to tell you a quick story. My son shared it with me. A chicken lays an egg. As long as the chicken lays the egg, you can eat. When you get hungry and you decide you're going to eat on the chicken, once you eat the chicken, you no longer have eggs. You no longer have viability. What I'm suggesting is that we let the chicken lay the egg. We get several eggs, nurture one of those eggs into another chicken so that we can eat.
Gary, the recent police study recommended the department employ only 1 officer on duty between midnight and 6 a.m.
Point
Yes.
of order. Which recent study? Are you referring to the Center of Governmental Research study?
1 second.
No, it didn't.
Who posed this question?
What difference does it make? A recent study.
Yeah.
Yeah.
The person that sent this question up, okay. A recent police study might have recommended the department employ only 1 officer on duty between midnight and 6 a.m. This is part of cost cutting. Are you in favor of this reduction of police protection overnight? And it really is irrelevant, but if the study did recommend that. That's the recommendation.
Okay, I'm not aware of this study, and the reason I ask is that the details are important. The Albion Police Department has a policy right now where at least 2 officers are on duty at any given time. And the reason for that, pure and simple, is a safety issue. Not only is it important to us as members of the community, when seconds count, the police are only minutes away. Isn't that an old truism? But more important, there's backup for a police officer. And among other things, to minimize overtime and to deal with staffing issues, they established a salary position, a lieutenant, that helped span shifts so there were more people available. So without seeing the relevant study, I can't actually address this thing. And I'm feeling kind of at a loss. I haven't seen anything like this. But no, I don't at any time support having less than 2 police officers available in the village of Albion. We need backup. Simple as that.
Thank you very much. Sandy, the recent police study recommended the department employ only 1 officer on duty between midnight and 6 a.m. This is part of cost cutting. Are you in favor of this reduction of police protection overnight?
While I'm in favor of cost cutting, I don't believe I can offer an exact opinion on this situation at this time. I would need to have more details, not only about the Albion Police Force themselves and what they would consider a possible safety issue, but also I'd like to know, as far as the Sheriff's Department is concerned, would they be providing backup within the village during that time if our one lone police officer was on duty? So I really can't give a yes or no answer to this because I need more information.
Thank you. Stan? The recent police study recommended the department employ only one officer on duty between midnight and 6 a.m. This is part of cost cutting. Are you in favor of this reduction of police protection overnight?
Definitely not. To begin with, it wouldn't be a cost cutting. We, as a village board, looked into this, and just like Eileen said, one person goes out sick, you call somebody in overtime. So it wouldn't be a cost cutting. Safety is a really big thing. As I did in my opening statement, I mentioned that the Albion Police is beginning training and carrying and administer Narcan. A lot of the emergency calls, EMS calls for overdoses, when I looked into this, are after midnight and the early mornings. So, I mean, they go out with EMS. They are the first responders. I was asked, why is it important for the Albion Police to do this? Albion Police is on the road. Now, if they have one officer and he happens to be at a traffic stop or a domestic or something, then you have somebody that needs the Narcan that's going to delay it. So for safety reasons and to save lives, I am not in favor of one police officer on. Thank you.
Thank you, Stan. Jason? The recent police study recommended the department employ only one officer on duty between midnight and 6 a.m. This is part of cost cutting. Are you in favor of this reduction of police protection overnight?
You know, if you look at the last census, you'll see like the household income. They estimated that in the village of Albion, it's in the area of 30,000, and outside, or for the county as a whole, it's in the area of 50,000. We have to realize that as a village, we have less resources than outside into the county. We have to get away from this mentality that it has to be the village that has to do it itself. Policing is is needed by everybody in the whole county. And I think it definitely would be worth more investigation into seeing if we merge a lot more of these agencies. I think in a county where you only have 40 to 50,000 people, you know, having little departments of 10 or 12 officers and then a sheriff's department with, you know, 20, 25 officers, I would think an appropriate level where you merged all those and have a level where you just have one bigger agency that services all the areas would potentially be a more efficient model. If you have a bunch of illnesses, you know, you could redeploy resources wherever you need them. You don't have to worry about ones and twos, and you have a lot better system to work with. Okay. Thank you.
Thank you. Kevin, you're going to begin this question. Please state your stance, the 30-second question, on assisting with events that are held in the village, Strawberry Festival, Metro 10, etc.
I think it's very important that the village be part of those. The village obviously is part of it because the police department is there. We need to be part of the planning, we need to be part of the assisting, we need to be part of the granting. Yes, absolutely, those and more.
Thank you. Joyce, please state your stance on assisting with events that are held in the village, Strawberry Festival, Metro 10, etc.
I totally agree. The village should be involved. They, especially, not just the police, but DPW. Quite frankly, I was really upset this past weekend when I was at the wine tasting and I could not cross the street for snow piled up high between the sidewalk and the street. Now, that's uncalled for. That we've known about that event way in advance. So we need to participate in these events, especially when we know far in advance that they're occurring.
Thank you. Gary, please state your stance on assisting with events that are held in the village, Strawberry Festival, Metro 10, etc.
I'm absolutely in favor of it. I think that those events add a lot to the quality of life. I happen to know that the DPW works hard both before and after events to try and make things happen. I think it's something that we should be supporting as much as we can. I personally am sad that the sheriff's auxiliary is gone because they used to provide an alternative for the police department. I think we should look into establishing a similar group now.
Thank you. Sandra, please state your stance on assisting with events that are held in the village, Strawberry Festival, Metro 10, etc.
I'll make this short and sweet. I love all these events. I would like to see the village get involved in even more. I agree with Gary. Quality of life in the village itself is based on these events. And if we can all do more, hey, let's do it.
Thank you. Stan, please state your stance on assisting with events that are held in the village, Strawberry Festival, Metro 10, etc.
Yes, I agree 100%. The village does. There's a lot of stuff they do in the backfield that people don't realize. I am the co-founder of Energize Albion, and we have a lot of events here in Albion. We go to the village, we ask them if they would like to help, they co-sponsor it. We had a tree burning winter festival up at the park. I called the village, they came up with their plow, they plowed it out for us right away. They help in the kickball tournament that's coming up, they help in Strawberry Festival. At this time, I know this is not really the question, but we do have a lot of events in the village, and there's two people in this village that really should be stood out. Lisa and Skip Stratton, they're at every single event, they help out, and if you know them, say thank you to them. Thank you.
Thank you, Stan. Jason, please state your stance on assisting with events that are held in the village, Strawberry Festival, Metro 10, etc.
Again, simple answer, I fully support that. That's what I believe the village should be for. You're getting some extra support for things that you might not have in other areas.
Okay, thank you. Eileen, please state your stance on assisting with events that are held in the village, Strawberry Festival, Metro 10, etc.
Absolutely. We have done it in the past, and we will continue to do it in the future. I think each event that is in the village, they have meetings with our chief of police. We have a permit that we have to go through an application, so absolutely, 100%.
Thank you. Joyce is going to start with this question. It's a 1-minute question. And actually, this is an opportunity to expound on your opening statement. Please describe your past and present community involvement, especially boards and volunteerism.
Well, now for that, I'll have to go way back. I don't know if any of you know, but I'm the oldest of 10 children. And I actually think my mom and dad did an awesome job with us. 5 of us went on to get 2 or more degrees. The other 5, they went to college for 1 year and decided it wasn't for them, which, as we know, it isn't for everybody. That being said, in my early years, I used to work with the migrant ministry that was in Albion. I also worked with Go Art years ago, and I thought that was a really awesome thing because I was young then and I wanted to get involved in the community. Later on, before I moved away, I was on the school board. And the school board is really an eye-opener because there, especially if you have children, you have an opportunity to have input. My time is up. But needless to say, I'm trying to say that I have been afforded an opportunity through my family, through village life, to come back and give back to my community. Bottom line.
Thank you. Gary, please describe your past and present community involvements, especially boards and volunteerism.
Okay, it's a little bit difficult to describe. When my children were young, I was active in the PTA. I also came in as a parent to be with my kids in their classes. I went through that for a few years. I was active in the Japanese club in our local high school. A little later on, when the kids were older, I was involved in the Albion Main Street grant, working with AMSA in the past. There was a group called the Downtown Albion Neighborhood Advisory Committee that I sat on for a couple of years. Was involved in the zoning board for the town. Right now, I'm in the Bullard Park Committee, a member of the Albion Merchants Association. Recently, I joined the Lions Club, and I'm active in my local church.
Thank you. Sandra, please describe your past and present community involvement, especially boards and volunteerism.
I'm going to refer back to my opening statement when I talked about the experience I had last winter with assisting the Hands for Hope people. This was very important to me because it showed me just how badly, and I hate to use that word badly, but it showed me how important it is that we as a community take care of our people that have less than we do. When we started off in Holly, and there were a few people, not a ton, but a few. And we went to Medina, also a few people. But when we went to Albion, I was told, we go twice to Albion. We go out by the Hope Library, or Hoyt Library, and over on Lightning Drive. I'm sorry, my time is up. But it did help me see how much people need assistance in this village.
Thank you. Stan, please describe your past and present community involvement, especially boards and volunteerism.
Yes, I'm a co-founder of Central Orleans Volunteer Ambulance. We worked on that for a year before we went into service. I'm a past president and presently on the board of directors at the ambulance. I'm a volunteer at Albion Fire Department, which I was president of Albion Fire Department, captain of the Albion Emergency Squad for a few years. I started Energize of Albion, which we do events here in Albion, which we have a lot planned, the tree burning, the Halloween. I help with all the other committees I can here. The Metro 10, whatever I hear that's coming up in Albion, we sit in and try to help on the boards. So, I really try to keep involved, try to get the community down. I do, as a village board member, I have open house, for the people to come down to the office and talk. So I try to keep active as much as I can. Thank you.
Thank you, Stan. Jason, please describe your past and present community involvement, especially boards and volunteerism.
For me, it's only really been the last couple of years where I've had available time to get into it. Again, I work for the most part on the other side of Rochester, and also for much of my life I've had a lot of family members who I had to help out who had health problems. So it's just the last few years where I've, especially with Gary Kent, have been trying to help out in some areas there. And also I've spent a lot of time supporting local candidates so that when people go to elections, they have some choices to choose from. And that's pretty much what I do.
Thank you. Eileen, please describe your past and present community involvement, especially boards and volunteerism.
Well, when my daughter was growing up, I actually was a co-daisy leader. I also helped with the high school musicals with Gary Simboli. I was a ticket salesperson for him for many years. I'm on the Community Action of Orleans and Genesee Board and GCC Advisory Board. I have been an active and supportive member of the Albion Fire Department through the auxiliary since 1979. I help with car shows, any village events that are happening, I'm always there to help out. I go to the Canal Concert Series and I help out every week with that. I helped out at the Wine Walk. So I'm pretty much all around.
Thank you very much. Kevin, please describe your past and present community involvement, especially boards and volunteerism.
As a 26-year 4-H volunteer, and no, I didn't teach sewing. I was doing things at the county fair. I spent 8 years as a fair board member there and was identified as the volunteer of the year. Got a free dinner out of that one time. I spent 12 years as an elected member of the Albion School Board and 8 years prior to that as a parent rep on what they identified as shared decision-making teams. I've worked at the Strawberry Festival for 32 years. I'm a vestry person and warden at the Episcopal Church. I've been doing that off and on for about 30 years. 4 times I was elected as a representative to the National Convention. I was the president of Special Friends. I've been on the Swan Library Board for 9 years. I've been the president, now that it's the Hoyt Library, for 7 years. And I was the volunteer dad to serve ketchup for the kids at St. Mary's School years ago.
Thank you for that enlightening background. Gary, this goes to you. Please describe what you see as the value of grants in village funding. 1 minute.
1 minute. Where do I start on that one? Is this, can you hear me in the back? Okay. My perception about grants is that I can say very little good about them. I resent that we send our money to Albany and then we have to turn around hat in hand asking them for some of it back. That said, without grants, the village would have a hard time operating right now. And unfortunately, grants are part of the fabric of New York State politics. I don't see them going away. I think it's incumbent on the village to do the best they can with grants. I think they've done an excellent job recently. The Bullard grant, the back truck grant, the fingerprinting grant for our police department, those are good things. And I think that we need to push that. I support the village's activity in hiring O'Connell for grants, and I think we should make that a priority.
Thank you. Sandra, please describe what you see as the value of grants in village funding.
I agree with Gary. Sometimes it seems like grants are a necessary evil. We should be able to do it all ourselves as a community. However, since we do not seem to have, we have not reached that point yet, then I would say that we do need these grants. It would be wonderful to get a grant to fix the sidewalks, as Holly did recently, and I think it would be very beneficial for everyone in the village.
Thank you. Stan, please describe what you see as the value of grants in village funding.
Well, as we stated before, we do have a grant writer, and she's been doing an excellent job. We just got $300,000 for the vac truck, which is going to save the village taxpayers quite a bit of money because that truck has to be replaced. We get an art grant every year, which benefits the village because we have the concerts downtown by the canal. I agree we definitely need grants. It keeps the tax down. Like I say, that vac truck right there, $300,000 is a really, really big thing for the village. So I do agree with grants. Thank you.
Thank you. Jason, please describe what you see as the value of grants in village funding.
Yes, I mean, that's a good source of revenue. It's out there. It's the way the system is designed, and we have to go after whatever we can get. But even though we try to get what we can there, it still probably won't solve the current financial troubles that villages throughout all of New York State have. They're the way things are, it's kind of rigged against villages from providing too much services. So I think we still have to move along and consider reinventing local government a bit, in addition to going after opportunities like grants. So thank you.
Thank you. Eileen, please describe what you see as the value of grants in village funding.
Well, in the past 3 years, the Village of Albion has received $668,000 in grants. So I think there's a very large value right there. And we continue to go for grants. Unfortunately, we're one village in a pot of several. So when we go for a grant, nothing is a guarantee. But if you don't get it the first time, you can continue to try. And I think that's something that the village should do, because there are services and there are things that need to be done in the village that we could get grants for. And sidewalks could be one of them. But you have to continue with the grant writer that we have, who is excellent, and we have to just continue to apply for these grants even though they're just not a guarantee. But like I said, we've gotten $668,000 in grants.
Thank you. Kevin, please describe what you see as the value of grants in village funding.
Be interested to know how many grants we didn't get. Grants. Lynn Billings was the legislature chair a number of years ago from Kendall, and his quote about grants are things that you use the funding for items which you desired that you would not put in your regular budget. Grants can be a viable part of a well-managed finance plan along with short and long-term debt when it's well managed. You have to evaluate the costs. What are you paying? And not only what is your outlay, but what is the time commitment of village employees to do it. There's no sense spending half of somebody's time in the central office, at the village office, to get a $10,000 grant. Those things have to be evaluated.
Thank you. Joyce, please describe what you see as the value of grants in village funding.
Kevin had me until the last statement. I think grants are, I think grants are a very valuable part of village of the village government. I think we need to pursue them. It's great that we have a grant writer. I do not happen to think that, well, I won't go 10, but I think a $50,000 grant is just as worth pursuing as a $400 or a $300 grant, because we know that when you're pursuing these larger grants for $500,000, you're looking at infrastructure. When you get those grants for $20,000, $30,000, $50,000, under $100,000, you're looking at something the community will actually see. It's usually like getting a mural up on a wall or plants to line the streets. So I don't poo-poo the small grants.
Thank you very much. That concludes the questions that have been sent up, the editorial staff's questions, and we are a little short on time to present any more questions because we do have wrap-ups from each candidate. Would you appreciate 2 minutes as opposed to 1 minute?
I submitted a question.
You have another question?
I submitted
We have a couple more, but the problem is we're supposed to be out of here by 8 o'clock.
I will present the question. Just
I have,
make it brief if you can. We'll try to get that in. If we can lengthen your closing statements, I'm wondering if you'd be interested in that. We'll try to get another question in. If you're good, you've got them. Yes.
that one that we started. That just came out.
Okay.
That would be Sandra.
You're going to need a minute. 1 minute. Yeah. Good question. And this is going to Sandra first.
I think it's Sandra, right?
Yes.
So I'm going to state this question. I'll think about it for a minute, and I'm going to address a few issues. Please share your thoughts regarding a 1% payroll tax on employees who work in the village but live outside the village. Please share your thoughts regarding a 1% payroll tax on employees who work in the village but live outside the village. The residency penalty, more or less. Think about it. I'm going to give you a minute, and then we are going to start with Sandy. We're going to get ready. I think this will be the conclusion because now we're going to push to get done by 8. I'd like to take this opportunity to thank our volunteers. Dick Remley. He's been our official timekeeper, and he's called me several times. I knew he would. We should have gone with someone else. Right. But thank you. Chad Fabre, screener, Gary Kent, Chris Sartwell, Judy Kohler, articulating the questions. Obviously, the Lake Country Penny Saver and Orleans Hub, hosted by the Albion Central School District. For all of our volunteers and all the folks that have helped put this on, and the candidates, Kevin Doherty, Joyce Riley, Gary Casanas, Sandra Walker, Stan Ferrone, Jason Dragan, and Eileen Banker. You know, the fact that they took up their time right to the end, very, very few times that they cut it short, means there's a lot of information and expertise and passion up here. They might not agree with you on everything that you think, but They're really involved in this, and as I said before, we're very fortunate for the quality of folks running these positions. So how about a round of applause for our volunteers? Ask the question again to you. Please share your thoughts on regarding a 1% payroll tax on employees who work in the village but live outside the village.
Well, to answer that question, I'm going to go back a few years. In the 80s, I worked at Kodak, and I drove in and out of Monroe County and Rochester every day for 5 days a week.
Yes.
While I was employed there was talk in Monroe County about assessing a tax on people like me who drove into the county to work. I am really not in favor of charging anyone anything extra because they're coming to a job. You choose the people that you employ within the village because they're the best people you can find. I don't know as if I would always consider that village jobs should go to village people, but for right now, I don't think we should charge anybody extra because they're driving in and performing their job. Thank you.
Thank you. Stan, please share your thoughts on regarding a 1% payroll tax on employees who work in the village but reside outside of the village.
No, I don't agree with that. I gotta agree with Sandy, exactly what she said. I worked at Kodak for 33 years, and I definitely wouldn't want to have them tax me for living outside Monroe County. Well, I would be afraid of that we might lose a lot of good help, a lot of good experienced people that live outside the village that would not want to come in the village just because of the 1% tax. I know it don't sound like much, but if you have kids, you have bills, I definitely would not agree with that. Thank you.
Thank you. Jason, please share your thoughts regarding a 1% payroll tax on employees who work in the village but live outside of the village.
I appreciate the sentiment, but it's kind of treating the symptoms instead of the cause. Like right now, the village is more heavily taxed than other parts of the county. So I might be like inclined, if we were hiring somebody, to give an initial preference to a village resident at this current situation. But my thought is that if we can get our village tax rates more in line with the rest of the county, then you wouldn't have to have that situation where you would even think about giving a preference to somebody. But as it is right now, you shouldn't be in this situation where somebody goes to work for the village, they become more successful, and then want to build a new home, and they say, well, I got to build it outside the village because I don't want to pay the village tax. I mean, that situation's wrong. Thank you.
Thank you. Eileen, please share your thoughts regarding a 1% payroll tax on employees who work in the village but live outside of the village.
I'm not in favor of that. I think when we do hire employees for the village, that we make our determination on the qualities and the experience that the employee would have to bring to the village. So unfortunately, sometimes, people do live outside of the village, but they may be the best person for that job. So no, I'm not in favor of that.
Thank you. Kevin, please share your thoughts regarding a 1% payroll tax on employees who work in the village but live outside of the village.
Well, I understand the concern about the people who are taking money from the village should be putting money back in at whatever tax rate. I'm inclined to think that a 1% penalty for an employee would be what we could consider the lawyer's full employment agreement. That by the time we got through the litigation with collective bargaining, that there wouldn't be anything left. Other organizations, the school district for one, tried for a while to do a $500 spiff if you were a resident. That certainly is more palatable, but really had no impact. Those decisions that make you build a house, buy a house, are so varied. My kids need to be in school here. We need to be halfway between here and my mom's or my wife's job. I need a horse barn. There are so many things that do that that's really not of value to us. Truly, our people need to be employed because they're the best at what they do. And I don't care if they fly in from Syracuse, as long as they're there to do their job.
Thank you. Joyce, please share your thoughts regarding a 1% payroll tax on employees who work in the village but live outside of it.
I think the board is unanimous. We do not, I personally don't feel that you should be taxing someone 1% when you went through the trouble to find someone for that job. Hopefully it is a person who is suited for that job. It is, it's not their fault that they live outside the village. However, we'd always welcome if they would come over to the dark side. And really, you know, it's levity, but it's really serious. Because if you want to attract people, that is not the way to attract them. And that 1% is not going to dent any shortfall that you might have. So, things first, people second.
Thank you. Gary, please share your thoughts regarding a 1% payroll tax on employees who work in the village but live outside of it.
Well, I would have a hard time supporting any additional tax at all. That sets wrong with me right up front. Second thing I would comment on is I could understand something like a signing bonus if someone were local. I think we should give consideration to people who live in the village if candidates are, in fact, equally qualified. But additional tax? No way. No.
Thank you very much. We're going to get ready to go to wrap-up statements. They're going to be 1 minute per candidate. Stan, you're going to begin. I'm going to give you a minute to think about that. Superintendent Bonwell, thank you so much for allowing us to use this facility and giving us the support you have. Hosting this is wonderful for the community, and obviously this is the center of the community. So we're really grateful for that. Thank you. And thank you for all the attendees. We had excellent questions. This is a great forum. You know, people were saying, well, we have issues, we have different opinions. This is nothing less than what I would have expected concerning the quality, considering of our community and the folks that would attend something like this. Your interest is really meaningful. Thank you so much for coming in. Okay, we're going to get ready to start wrap-ups. Mr. Fruin, are you ready?
Yes, I am.
Okay.
Well, to begin with, I'd like to thank everybody for coming. There's a really nice crowd here, a lot more than I thought they would probably show up tonight. Thanks for the volunteers and Mike and all the candidates up here. The Village of Albion is a very good place to live. I mean, we have a lot to do, a lot of ways to go, but myself, I am open to meet with anybody one-on-one. I know I'm sitting up here stuttering and didn't really answer all the questions the proper way, probably, but if I'm sitting one-on-one, I will answer any questions that you have. I'm available anytime to answer any questions. So please call me or get me on Facebook or whatever. I like to volunteer. We do a lot of volunteer. And like I say, we got to make this village grow, and we cannot do it without the help of everybody. So please come to the village board meetings. They're every other Wednesday, the second and fourth Wednesday. With your input, and we definitely work with you. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Jason Dragon.
Well, I'd like to thank everyone for coming out. I think we all want to work towards a future where we have as prosperous of the village as we can. Times are changing, and I think we can't be afraid of a little bit of change as long as we preserve what it is that we really want and value in our village of Albion. But then again, I'm very pleased that we have a competitive election this time, and I would encourage more members of the community to participate and run for office, because I'd like to see the days where you have so many open positions. When you go to vote, you only have one choice. I think I would like to relegate that to history if we could possibly. So thank you very much.
Thank you. Eileen Banker.
First, I would like to apologize for me stuttering and hesitating during questions. I was very nervous tonight, and most of you I know. I'd like to thank everybody for their time in coming tonight. Not going to make empty promises. However, if I have the opportunity to serve as your mayor, I will make financial and administrative decisions that will be in the best interest of the safety and well-being of the residents of the village of Albion. I love our village. I've spent my whole life here, as did my parents. Every day I have the best interests of the community in my heart and mind. I look forward to speaking with residents at meetings and office hours that will be scheduled monthly, and I'll be listing my cell phone number on village website if anybody has any questions. Thank you.
Thank you. Kevin Doherty.
Many of my peers here tonight have highlighted, and rightly so, their management experiences. However, Peter Drucker, the management guru, has been quoted as saying, "Good managers do things right. Leaders do the right things." The village of Albion needs a mayor who is a leader. I have a proven and documented record of team playing, team building, and team leadership that are just what the village of Albion needs now. Our observation at the library is that success breeds success. As we do more things well, donors step up in all sized increments. When we build a few new houses, we can start to reverse the downward spiral of this village. Please visit my website, a link to which is found on every Hub and Penny Cyber ad, because unlike the websites linked to my opponent's ads, mine actually gives you some details of where I think we can take this village and why you should be comfortable joining my team. Vote Doherty to spark the change.
Thank you. Joyce Riley.
If you like what you currently have, then I'm not for you. I'm for the person or the village that wants or feels that they need to change direction. I have the experience, I have the know-how, I have the tenacity. I am like the attack bulldog when it comes to problems. I don't quit with the first no. The other part to that is I feel that the mayoral position here in the village is not a part-time position. It is full-time. And I am here to tell you I have nothing but time but to get to know everyone that works for the village and make sure that they are working for you. Because at the bottom line, if it were not for you, the village wouldn't exist. And if we're not if we're not taking care of our financial responsibility, the village will disappear. Everything is on the table.
Thank you. Gary Katsanis.
Well, I'd like to thank everybody for coming out. I really do appreciate having you all here. Speaking for myself, I have the time, I have the skills, I have the willingness to work. I'm not presenting myself as the perfect candidate. I don't have answers to everything we've discussed here, but I've demonstrated in the past that I'm willing to talk, I'm willing to meet with anybody, I'm willing to work with everybody, any place, any time to benefit the village of Albion. I support our community. I believe in our community. I belong to the Merchants Association. I belong to the Lions Club. I'm on the Restored Bullard Committee. I don't have to walk into the village board and have a seat in the front to do my best for the village. But that said, I'm grateful to have an opportunity, and I'd like to serve the village again as a trustee. Please consider supporting me.
Thank you. Sandra Walter.
I also would like to thank all of you for coming out tonight. It tells me that there are many of you who also care about this village as I do. This evening has been all about the candidates. Now it becomes all about you. I hope that over the next few days you will contact your friends and neighbors and urge them to vote on March 20th. The future of this village is up to you.
Thank you. As we conclude, I'd like a couple reminders. If you know anybody that hasn't registered to vote, tomorrow's the deadline, March 9th, Board of Elections. The election is March 20th, noon to 9 at the Village Hall. Thank you all for coming out. I'm very impressed by everybody, the information.